Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dexter New Blood. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, for Dexter, he's picking up in the aftermath of finding that razor blade in Harrison's stuff, now realizing, for him, it's like, no, there's no way this could happen, but Deb is like, right. He was born in blood just like you were, but Dexter's like, no, our situation is different. She's like, no, because he's thinking like, there's no way Harrison could remember it, and she's like, you remembered it. And so for her, it's just like, because Dexter's like, let me talk to him, because like, if I can talk to him, I can let him know like he's not alone. But she's like, if you do that, you're gonna mess him up. Like, the thing is, like, he's already, like, a messed up situation, but the fact of the matter is, because Dexter talks about going through life lonely, like, the fact is he always has to pretend, but this is someone he can open up to. And I love this line from Deb where she was like, what Dad did to you, what Harry did to you was abuse, like, basically turning you into a serial killer, letting you lean into those dark sides of yourself. Because, to be fair, it wasn't just him, it was Evelyn as well, like, that whole situation came about because of a combination of the two of them. So if it wasn't Harry reaching out to her, like, who knows if Dexter would be what he is. But there is this situation of, I think it's interesting because Dexter was like, oh, I'm lonely. It's like, well, Deb knew what you were and she didn't 100% turn you in, but to be fair, she was just as culpable, and to be fair, she tried to like come clean about it. But despite, when it was all said and done, things between you got better, but you were also evolving into not being that thing anymore. So there's also like complications, but you solely being who you are and being accepted for who you are. No one's ever fully accepted, because even Hannah like kind of knew what you were, but still kind of like, The closest he got was Evelyn, he didn't have to hide from, and Zach. In fact, he wanted Zach to kind of be his protege. So, like, there have been elements of it, but to be able to have that connection with your own son, because that's why at the end of the last episode, I was kind of under the impression, like, Dexter was kind of smiling because he was happy, because Deb made a remark about, like, right, you want him to be like you so that you can finally connect with him, because if he's normal, you guys won't be able to connect at all, because he's nothing like you. At the end, I thought there was a smirk on Dexter's face. Now, I don't know in the recap whether they cut away from it, but I thought there was some relief in his face, but I guess it is just kind of, that was always his concern. He wanted to make sure his son was never like him. That's also why he never stuck around. I'm like, I don't want to influence that bad nature in you. I want you to be a good person. You'll always be plagued by all this stuff. Because I've brought you to terrible situations where I've kind of lost my cool and my control, and so, it's happened more than once, so. Obviously, it literally happened in the final season. He took him to a crime scene, even covered his favorite toy, his, like, bunny or whatever, in blood, so. But what makes it even more interesting, too, is if you take a step back and remember, like, right, these manifestations of Harry or Deb is just his subconscious manifesting in the form of the person, and because his brain is saying what that person would say. That's just his mind telling him what he already knows. He's just fighting against it to some extent. He just needs people to balance him out, because he doesn't want his voice to be the only voice he hears. He manifests to people that will give him pushback. Won't always 100% agree with him, but especially Deb. Deb never was on board with what he was. She was always fighting back, and so he's kept that side of her alive inside of himself, so it's just interesting thinking about, like, right, you're getting pushback from your own subconscious, but, it's, aside from his manifesting the way it is, it's a very normal thing in its own regard, but he confronts Harrison about everything, and for Harrison, he feels like he's being attacked, because it's like, right, everyone else in town thinks of me as a hero, but you, in fact, think of me as, like, some liar or something. But Dexter just wants him to open up, because it's like, if you open up to me, like, I can help you and explain that everything's okay. But Deb got into his head about it. Because despite Deb kind of yelling at him about it, there is that kind of sweet moment of, like, at the end before the title card pops up, she does kind of wrap her arms around him, like, it's okay, like, we'll find a way through this. And he was trying to explain that to Harrison, because Harrison knows he's odd. He probably has always known he was a little off, because obviously Hannah never told him anything about who Dexter was, because Dexter wouldn't have wanted it that way. So it's like, right, your dad's going, like, I'm not going to tarnish your memories of your dad by telling you, like, right, on top of him being the dad he was also a serial killer. It's like, when do you broach that conversation? So Harrison's just pissed at his dad because it's like, right, him and his dad are having in a better place as things have gone on, but now it just feels like, oh, you're attacking me. You were already questioning me before. That's the thing. Like, you know, you got caught. You know your dad's right, but you're just like, you don't appreciate him talking to you like he knows you, like he's looking out for your best interest. Like, where were you the past decade plus of my life? Like, nah, get out my face about that, you know? So that's the sad aspect of it all. But even the Harrison's teacher, who's also, you know, the bartender, she had recommended he actually get therapy. And Dexter, you could tell, was kind of reluctant because it's like, yeah, like, because in his mind, Dexter was probably thinking like, I'm the only one that can really help my son. I want to be the one to help my son, because if you're not, cause I think any parent will feel that to some level. Like, it's not, I don't think it's a rational thought, but it's just like, right, as a parent, I want to be able to do all that I can for my child. I want to be able to support them and let them know I'm here. But there's just certain conversations a child will never have with their parents that can just never feel like they can open up about it. I mean, some people, it depends. Some people have those relationships with their parents where they open up about everything. I particularly don't, you know, not necessarily, it's just like, some, you know, I'm not alone in it. I know a lot of people don't, like, always open up to their parents about a lot of stuff, but some people do. But it's just like, it just depends on, I guess, like, the nature of your relationship with your parents and stuff like that, you know? So Harrison definitely doesn't have that with his dad, because he hasn't known his dad since he was a little kid, and a lot of anger has carried him throughout life. But obviously he goes to a party where everybody's celebrating him. Sadly, the whole thing was a byproduct of Audrey. Once again, kind of showing that Audrey's a bit of an odd duck herself. Is the fact is that she took a picture of, like, the kill list, and there was a party thrown with all the people who survived, and Harrison's being heralded as his hero. But I think a combination of thinking what he did, getting high, which he already explained he has issues when it comes to drugs, so him getting high was not a good idea. But he's spiraling because, like, his dad's, like, comments, like, have weighed down on him, because he knows, like, yeah, something is wrong with me. Even this girl was like, hey, I want you to take this knife, I want you to carve like H into my foot, so I'll always remember who saved me. I was like, that's weird. Okay, like, couldn't we, like, get, like, some ink and, like, pseudo tattoo it on, like, we have to go knife? And he cuts her foot. I was like, oh. And they didn't chastise him or anything. It's like, well, it's what she wanted, but she wasn't expecting it. So he's just going around popping more stuff, drinking, until, like, you know, he's like, oh, didn't you hear? I'm the fucking hero. And even Audrey's like, wow, you're spiraling. And he's just like, yeah, my dad calls me a liar. He's the fucking liar. You know, Jim Lindsay isn't even his real name. I'm like, damn it, Harrison. You didn't want people up in your business, but because you're so pissed at your dad, plus you're high right now, you spoke all that. And he probably doesn't even remember that he blabbed that out. But I was like, oh, that's not good. The last person you want to hear that is Audrey, considering who her mom is, you know? So, but he ends up passing out because he overdosed. Luckily, Audrey ended up calling 911. Logan shows up and was able to wake him up. Because it turns out it wasn't just regular pills. It wasn't, because the first pill was like ecstasy, but it was like fentanyl in the next one. Like, you know, you never know what, with those homemade pills, like, what's being mixed in. Because they thought it was just oxy, but it was like oxy mixed with like fentanyl. Like, it was being cut with like fentanyl type of thing, you know? So it was a lethal dose that he could have died. And the thing is, Dexter shows up and he's worried about Harrison, but Logan's also kind of chastising him a little bit by being like, yo, like, maybe you should, which Dexter is like, all right, back the fuck up, Logan. Like, oh, you think you know that this parenting thing figured out? Like, you know, because this situation touched, like, we really get into the weeds of it later on, but Logan has a certain perspective in this episode that made me go like, yeah, like, this must hit home to him. Like, it must just be like he's seen too many young children die from, like, this type of overdose type of thing, but this time it hit super close to home, because it's like, yo, this is one of my kids you're messing with. So that's what, you know. But, like, it seemed like this might be personal, because you never seen, because Logan seems like the cheery, like, carefree guy to some extent, but, like, he went hard in the paint this episode. But obviously, like, Dexter was lashing out at Logan because he felt like he was failing on some regards, you know. And no matter what he was saying to Harrison wasn't going to listen to him, because it's like, yeah, whatever, you want me to go to, sure. It was also kind of a dick mood of Harrison, like, when his dad made him breakfast. Like, you want to throw the breakfast away? You're like, I'm not going to eat anything, you fix me. Sure. Throwing the plate away, too? Don't be a dick. You know, that's some extra dickery, but it's also like, right, you're pissed. You know, you're a teenager. whose father has been absent from his life, and now you always want to swoop in and be super parent. It's like, no, you weren't there for me, you know. So I had to grow up on my own in certain regards, because he tried to say like, right, like when you've kind of been on his own for as long as he has, like people get weird, and so that's why he kept the razor around for defense, you know. It's like, oh, so why did you take it to school? That whole conversation. So Dexter found out who was responsible. Miles, the guy who actually was selling the drugs. And Dexter decided to take it into his own hands, and he tried to go after Miles. He tried to knock Miles out, which I love that he does have his own pseudo shopping center, because he gets it from, like, I guess she's like the local vet in town. And he was like, oh, can I get, she's like, yeah, just take whatever you need and pay me back. And I was like, oh, all in one shopping. Like, he was able to kind of get everything he needed to, you know, for his kills, like the syringes and the stuff that he uses to knock people out. But before he could even get to Miles like he wanted to, Logan and the others show up, and so he had to snap into like, oh, I'm beating your ass, like, stay away from my son type of thing. It's like, yeah, I love how, I figured Logan and them would show up before he had the opportunity to do anything. I just didn't expect it to even get that far with the needle in the neck, the syringe in the neck thing. But, Logan wasn't judging him too much. He's like, I understand. And like I said, you saw Logan in that moment. Even Dexter was like, holy crap, damn, Logan, even I'm intimidated right now. Because it's like, oh, like, for every charge, he's going into pain. He's like, if Harrison had died, I wouldn't have pulled his father off of you. He's like, you can't say that. That's blah, 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 blah. But Logan's like, I don't care. Like, for all those charges, all those people that died because of the OD, because of you, that's going to be a homicide charge against you. It's like, whoa. So Miles gets let go, but Dexter decides to go after the actual guy behind all of this. What was this, Jasper? Jasper, before before Logan and them catch up. And even Deb was like, she's like, I've never seen you like this. This isn't even to fulfill your urge. This isn't even to following the code. You're just out for vengeance. And he's like, yep. Which I'm like, Dexter's killed out of vengeance before. Well, the guy that, well, to be fair, Deb didn't know about that, so this is kind of a Deb, I don't know. Because, like, well, I mean, technically Daniel, like, the final kill of, well, technically the final kill, because, once again, it depends on how you view the whole Deb situation, but, like, him killing Daniel, like, that was out of vengeance. He killed his, the person who killed his, mom, the guy responsible for that was out of vengeance. So he's had those moments, but usually it is to fit like a code. Like some of those still fit within the confines of the code and everything. But this is one situation where it's just like, let the others handle it. But it's like, no. I'm like, you know, because for Dexter, it's like what pisses him off the most is like, my son could have died because of this guy. Sadly, when Dexter does his thing, though, Logan had shown up already. Because that guy running his mouth, I'm like, you're strapped to a table and he's saying he's doing this for all the victims, but he's like, no. Those people, they came to me for drugs. It's like, yeah, and you gave it to him, you preyed upon him. He's like, they were weak. Your son over D, that's because he's fucking weak. Like, you're like, but I get like, man, a lot of people, I don't know. You think you'd be a little more timid in those moments. I mean, I guess you're going to say whatever comes to your mind because you're scared out of your gourd, but it's like talking mad shit to the person that's got you like strapped down to a table doesn't seem like the smartest idea. But before Dexter could even finish his ritual, Logan showed up. So he had to put the dude back in his clothes, clean up the room so it didn't look like his scene, and he basically made the dude overdose. And I'm like, wow, didn't get to do your ritualistic situation. To be fair, this was a little bit different anyway, so you kind of had to make small sacrifices for your children. It's kind of like the moment he was kind of saying at the end there with that. Which, him not being able to finish his ritual is so fascinating because it parallels Kurt's thing. Like, he got Chloe in the room and she's like, oh, like, what are you going to want from me? He's like, oh, I just want you to pay it forward, blah, 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 right? Because we got a little insight into some of Kurt's, why he does what he does, and like the very particulars of it. Because once again, no one likes their process being interrupted. Dexter didn't like that because he didn't get to, do his normal thing. Granted, once again, he wasn't doing this because of the code. He wasn't doing it because of his urge. So him breaking in this regard, which he's killed people outside of this regard, like Daniel, for example. So he's evolved enough that it doesn't break him. But Kurt, if he kills someone out of sequence of not the way it's meant to be, it screws him up. Because Chloe wasn't like the others. Because Chloe, started taking off her clothes, and he was like, no, stop doing it. She's like, this is what you want, right? Kurt was disgusted by it. Because I think for him, he wants these women to be clean and pristine, and he doesn't want to look at them in sexual, because it seems like this is all stemming from someone that ran away from Kurt. Because he plays this song, and Tess, she's the bartender slash teacher, he goes in there every couple months and starts dancing with her. And out asking her to dance with him. So, in that particular song, Runaway, which is also the title of the episode, someone ran away from Kurt, and now he's playing out that methodology like every time with these kills. But Chloe didn't go, she didn't fit the bill. She, instead of, for one, she tried to attack him, when he's like, go, and she's like, what if I don't want to make me? So she attacked him with some glass she had. And when he was like, oh, run, or I'm going to kill you, and she charged towards him, so he shot her straight in the head, in particular in the eye, and he's like, you ruined this, it wasn't supposed to go like this, and he shoots her even after she's dead, because it's like, right, it's like he has this particular, just like Dexter kills everyone, he has a very particular way he does this, and so that process was interrupted by this, so... That's why he's kind of somewhat in a sour mood later on in the episode. I think it's fascinating. Just like Dexter has his means of cutting up bodies and stuff like that because of what happened to his mom. Harrison doing what he's doing because of what happened to his mom. So whether Kurt's the exact same manner of right, his mom was killed in a fashion or she tried to run away. Maybe he had because he talked about it a little bit with Harrison later on about he had a complicated relationship with his dad. And just like he had a complicated relationship with Matt. So part of me wonders, could his dad have been abusive, and how Kurt's killing these runaway women is the same way Kurt's mom was killed by his abusive dad or something. So, because why it's a one-shot kill type of thing. And I think that's why he drains the blood, because he's trying to make them pristine and everything. It's like a weird way of helping these people, these women who are forgotten, who are lost. He's like, oh, I'm taking care of you. I'm trying to, because if you're left on your own, you're going to have to do terrible things just to survive. He's justifying it. I feel like because of that trend of what happened to Dexter's mom, what happened to Harrison's mom, I feel like they are aiming it towards it being Kurt's mom, especially with him talking about the conversation with Harrison about how complicated his relationship was with his own dad. And the sad thing is, because at first I was like, Harrison's on his own. I was like, is Kurt going to do that? But it's no, he can't, because Jim is going to come looking for, these are people who are alone, have no one to really contact, so it's not like he can do that with Harrison. Once again, Harrison doesn't fit his bill. I think if anyone probably would end up fitting that, it probably is going to end up being Angela. But I'm not Angela, Audrey, but I'm would he really do that, considering it's Angela's daughter? So I think it'd be a different circumstance. So I don't see that happening. But the fact is, I think the sad thing is that Harrison is looking towards someone he feels can understand him, and that's Kurt, not realizing oh, you have someone who completely understands you right on your roof. You're just not willing to listen to him, and he's scared to ever tell you the full truth, because if he tells you that, he doesn't know how you'll react. He became the monster he is, and he doesn't want to make you the monster he is. He wants to try and find a way to make you better than him. Help you through this somehow without having to go down that route. But by going down this route, he's pushing Harrison closer to the wrong person he should be following, which is ironic to say, considers should he be following his actual father's footsteps? No. But should he be following Kurt's? No. Because at the very least, Dexter has a code that needs and should be followed, so we'll have to wait and see where things kind of go on that front. Because Dexter and Harrison's relationship, because Kurt suggested, right, do something nice for the person, even if you're mad at them, especially because you're mad at them, do something, Because it is the thing of, yeah, I've been around a while, so I might know a thing or two, so take the advice or don't. But he does seem like he does take it to some extent, but, he lies to his dad, oh, I went to therapy, but it was nice to talk to someone. He's going to try and go to Kurt, but I think eventually he's going to stumble upon what Kurt's actually up to, and that's going to put him in, that's going to put Harrison in Kurt's crosshairs, but we'll see. Because Dexter hasn't quite figured out, in his own regard of, why. Because he's seeing, the way Kurt's acting. He's either that guy's crazy or I am. Because it's he knows Matt's not alive, but, why is he lying? Why is he covering up for it? Deb had, made her suggestions last episode, whatever about, but now we know even more. So it's like, I don't want you to find out about what I'm up to. So, but speaking of the Matt situation, both Molly and Angela went to New York to actually find him because they found all his credit charges are connected to a hotel. A very high-end motel, and it's like, right, then half the town is looking for him, and the bastard's in New York in some, living it up in some hotel, so they want to confront him. To be fair, Molly wants to do it because, without it, it's like her podcast is kind of a little screwed, but they decide to go because they can check up on Matt while also checking out this conference for cops and stuff like that. And lo and behold, who's there? Angel. I was like, yeah! I chilled when I saw David Zayas. I was like, yeah! I was like, that's awesome. I was wondering if we were going to get any other faces. And it's like, yeah. I was like, that's cool. But also at the same time, you're like, that's not good. The two people connected to Dexter like that in the same room. But basically, he was referencing, talking about the Bay Harbor Butcher. I was like, oh, funny. That basically, he kind of essentially says, right, something you have to think about with these things. It's like, when you have all these things that don't necessarily link together, they seem like they're separate things, sometimes you might have to consider it's actually one person, like the Bay Harbor Butcher, then eventually even the Trinity Killer thing. But, obviously, the people that go missing are 15 to 25-year-olds, prostitutes, runaways, and stuff like that. And obviously, even Angel's like, right, there is no actual connection, but there might be something to it. It's like, all you have to do, I forgot what advice he actually gave her, but basically, he was referencing how Deb handled the Trinity Killer thing. It's like, she had a nephew, what was his name? Cute kid. And I was like, is he gonna? Okay, I was like, he didn't remember Harrison's name, so he's walking away, so it's fine. And he turns, it's like, right, Harrison. And you're like, oh boy. And she's probably going, you wouldn't think much of it. It's like, Harrison, that's funny. My boyfriend's son's name is Harrison. Obviously, she didn't mention anything, because why would she? She mentions as having a boyfriend. He was like, hey, I don't want to be on the wrong end of an axe. I'm like, haha, that's funny, Angel. But obviously, Dexter would never kill you, because, you were someone that did matter to him, even though it was all for a front. His life is Dexter Morgan. You were an important part of it, and he was kind of sad to walk away from it all, and the people that were part of that life. But, so now, taking all that advice, they end up finding out also that Matt wasn't at the hotel. It's some other guy pretending to be Matt. So I'm assuming Kurt paid the guy to pretend to be Matt, or not unless he ended up getting Matt's, not unless, it had to be Kurt doing that, because he knew somebody would come looking eventually. So, but he didn't account for Angela and Molly to go up there themselves to physically check it out. So, because I was wondering, because I thought when they got there, they'd be like, we got no record of some Matt. It's like, I thought they did name and stuff like that only, but it makes sense that you would get a person there, because no one would wait around for the surveillance footage. They just chalk it up to that. But Angela was like, no, something's not right about this. Let me talk to Matt directly, because no matter how much she tried to reach out to him, the only person who actually talked to Matt was his dad, which we know is a bold-faced lie. But now it's like, cool, so that's not Matt, but also, why would Kurt lie about it? And boy, oh boy, do we get our little stinger at the end when Angela, because Angela found out from Logan about everything that happened with Audrey at the party and everything, but it's like, right, she was sober and she did the right thing. So it's like, right, I'm proud of you for doing the right thing. Harrison's alive, he's okay, everything's fine. Zach's getting in a little trouble, but that's about it. She's like, yeah, but it was something weird Harrison said. He said Jim Lindsay isn't even his dad's real name. And you're like, oh boy. And then I guess, I don't know, putting it together it's not his real last name, hearing about, he mentioned Harrison, there's a Harrison that popped, what's up with that? And so she looks into it. Now, granted, Dexter could easily sweep that away. It's going to cause some issues in a relationship, sure, but he could sweep that under the rug, because all the stuff about Dexter is just going to be he was a forensic analyst for the Miami PD. It's nothing bad, So he disappeared and died as Dexter Morgan, not as Dexter Morgan, a.k.a. the Bay Harbor Butcher. So no one's going to draw those correlations together, So that's definitely going to be the interesting thing of she can confront him about it, but it's going to be right, you lied about everything. And he was and he could just be right, a lot of stuff happened. Harrison's mom, she was murdered by a serial killer. Plus, my sister died. It was just I just wanted I wanted a fresh start, and that there's something there. Angela's still gonna be like, really, but that's definitely going to be interesting too, because Audrey had brought it up earlier about like, oh yeah, the podcast. He's like, oh right, like Harrison just kind of swept it off, like yeah, it's fine, like that he liked it and stuff like that. But now that he exposed his dad, Angela's probably going to be like, yeah, Harrison, his mom was killed by the Trinity killer, and then Audrey's going to be like, wait, what? I sent him the podcast that was literally about the serial killer that killed his mom, and he's actually technically part of it because Molly referenced the baby in that, and he was said baby, so. That's when I'm like, oh, dude. But the problem is, like, as he's bringing up at the end, like, it just takes one thing to kind of snap that fragile thread. And that thread's coming a little unraveled. Granted, like I said, Dexter has ways of maneuvering around that. It's still going to blow up in his face because Audrey's going to be like, well, you've been not Audrey. Angela's like, you've been lying to me the entire time. I thought I knew you. I know you didn't want to talk about your past, but this is something else. You recreate idea, like what, he, like you said, he could be like, I'm running from my old life. I couldn't stand, so there's ways around that, and I'm curious, is Harrison going to hear any of those conversations? We'll ultimately have to wait and see where the next episode takes us with all of this. It's going to be wild, I'm sure, but I'm excited to see what happens. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.